size of the high school almost begins to work against that. We try, but we have to be honest. We obviously don't reclaim everybody. We don't save everybody. So that, no, we're not able to do it. And if we had smaller groups, you know, schools used to be much smaller entities, and it was a lot easier at that point to get to know kids and to identify problems almost before they became problems. That's no longer a part of our educational system, and we've lost something because of that. Very good question, Mrs. England. And we've opened up, just as we did last year, we end up opening up more questions than we probably answer. But I'm a great believer, and I'm a great believer of this in the classroom as well, that when you open up areas of dialogue, you begin at least searching for solutions. I would like to take us into a final area today. I would be remiss if we don't get to this, primarily because if 10 kids said that drugs and alcohol and other things were a problem, 30 or 40 said that the last area that I want to cover and ask you to respond to was an area that was a problem. And we're talking about the peer pressure that is involved with sexual pressure and in that area. And I want to read a very short quote from a student. Scary for some of the parents sitting here, I think. And then 3 comments from 17 magazine, and then just open it up to some general discussion. One of the areas, or one of the comments that a student said was that there is a great amount of pressure for students to have sex after the prom. I'm quoting now from a student here. And a couple comments from 17 magazine was that guys have pressure to be sexually active. Sometimes they feel they have to make sexual conquest to prove themselves to other guys. And finally, a comment was made, the most difficult kind is probably the kind that comes from a person that you think you love. Obviously, this is something that students are thinking about, and it's something that they become aware of. And if any of you have walked the halls of our high school, I sometimes kid that I think some of the students spend a lot more time with each other than I see my wife during a given day. And that sort of bothers me for some reason, because we're theoretically together 24 hours a day. What have your observations been? How would you suggest that students can deal with the pressure in an area that is very real? And I would like to open this up not only to the panel, but obviously the parents too, who have to face and who have to deal with these pressures. What would you suggest to students who come home? Do they come home and talk to you? Maybe that's the first place to start. Do they come home and talk with you about experiencing these kind of pressures? Do you hear them talking about these things?
I've heard some students talk about it. From my perspective, sex is status with the students. I had a young girl the other day tell me that she hadn't had sex in 5 weeks. And she was a little upset about that. She was a 10th grade student. To her, it was something that was important, something that she needed to have on a regular basis. With the young men that I come in contact with, it's status. If you're not involved, there must be something wrong with you. That's what I've seen all along. That it's a status type of thing. Everyone's doing it. If you're not, there's obviously something wrong. You must be homosexual or something.
Debbie, the program that you mentioned that you worked with, with this idea of learning how to say no, is that a program that deals with problems in the area that we're just talking about here?
Well, at 5th grade, they really don't get into a whole lot of questions or interest in sex. But as they get older, yes, it's definitely something that they do have to deal with. And when they talk about how to say no, yes, it's just part of the big idea. You make your own decisions, and then you figure out how you're going to respond to the peer pressure. But I guess the most important part is that they make the decision to say no first, then figure out how to say it. With the program that I work with, practice makes perfect. We have the kids practice role-playing it with their friends, first with the teacher, with the friends, and then we send them home to try it. I don't know that it works, but I like to think that it's better than if they hadn't practiced.
Debbie Jackson, you talked about your son who is at home. Did he have any experience where he felt that there was peer pressure in this area as he moved through school?
Well, yes, he did. But we used to sit down and we used to talk about these things. And what was important to us was values. I always told my boy, I said, just remember who you are. You go out at night, you go out to the parties or where you're going. Remember that you represent me. You represent Mr. Jackson. You are my direct representative. I always told him that. So when you go out, just remember who you are. That's what I used to tell him.
All right. I'd also like to ask any of you parents if you have comments here, or if any of your children have talked with you about this area, whether or not they felt pressure, or whether or not you had to deal with them in this to respond to them in any way. Has it come up in any of your families? Have any of you had any difficulties with this? And I'll allow you to think about that for a moment, see whether or not it's a problem. We have a phone call. You're happy to hear that. Right? Commercial break now.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller. You're on the air.
Just good evening, everyone. I'm a senior at Norristown Area High School, and I'm calling for two reasons. First, I'd like to give my comments on Mr. James was referring to earlier how students or teenagers have to learn how to make decisions. Decisions come with drugs, with alcohol, and with sex, which is what you're talking about now. Now, I think it's safe to call me, I think you referred to us as good kids. I think it's safe to call me that I've been referred to in that manner. And I have to give the sole credit for any decision that I made. It's because of my parents. My parents deserve all the credit. And I don't think enough attention is given to this. I think parents and their teenagers need to build a strong relationship. I respect my parents and they respect me. And when I'm in a situation where I'm faced with drugs, alcohol, or sex, the first thing that pops into my mind is my parents. I say to myself, oh geez, what would my parents think if I do this? I would be letting them down. I would be breaking the trust that I have with them. And if you don't have trust with your parents, and if the parents don't respect their teenagers, it's all downhill from there. Because you'll never be able to make the right decisions. And that's what keeps me going. My parents respect me, and if I feel I'm doing something wrong, I know I'm going to be letting them down, and that's what keeps me. That's just my opinion. And the second reason I'm calling is, I know Alicia is the only senior up there, the only student there, and I welcome any questions. If anyone has any questions, they want to ask me also.
I'd like to adopt you as my daughter.
Mr. Mills is my favorite English teacher.
Can I say something? I agree with her. When you are faced with those kind of pressures, you do think, oh my gosh, what if mom or dad found out, or what if I'm letting mom and dad down? So I have to say I agree with her, you know. And as far as a strong parent-child relationship, I believe in that also, because when you talk to your parents about sex, because I talk to my mom, because sometimes my dad just kind of looks at me. Dads are hard to talk to for girls, but when you talk to mom and you talk to her about sex, or the peer pressures as far as sex is concerned, and you go out into the world and you're faced with that, it feels a lot better to know that you talk to somebody about it and that you can make that decision on your own rather than jumping right into something. So I have to say I really agree with her. I really do.
I have a quick question for you. Do you think, listening to you and Alicia here, do you think that most of your classmates feel the way that you do? And do you think that most of them have had the kind of conversations that Alicia had and have the feelings that you do? Or do you think many of them do not feel as you do?
No, I have to say that most of them do not feel the way I do. And I don't think that the teenager is entirely to blame. I think it's 50-50. I mean, the parents have to want it. They have to be able to talk to their kids. You have to respect your kids if you expect them your wishes also. You have to respect them if they're going to respect you. It goes both ways. I could have had a better set of parents, and I credit everything. The way I've turned out, I think I've turned out okay, I don't know. And I credit my parents. There's no way I could make it through this world without my parents and what they taught me. They're the best influence in the world. That's what keeps me going. And I think parents need to realize this. And so many times I'm out with other students, and we'll be out, and they'll call their parents at night, around 12 o'clock at night, and they'll say, Mom, Dad, I'm sleeping out tonight, I'm staying over at a friend's house. So many times, I don't know if parents realize this, but every time a teenager calls and says they're sleeping out, they're going to stay out all night and get drunk and sleep over at a friend's party. It's exactly what happens. My parents, if I call them and say, I'm sleeping out, they say, no, you're not. You're going to be home.
not going to be very popular with your classmates after that comment. Yeah, one of the comments that was in 17 I think it was in 17 magazine, also mentioned this along the lines of what you just said, that a tremendous number of teenagers, your age group, lie to their parents, and they're encouraged to lie by their peers. Do you find this to be true?
That's true. That's exactly true. And then that goes back to respect. If you respect your parents, you're not going to lie to them. If I ever lied, I've told white lies. I've lied to my parents before. I'm not a saint. I've lied to my parents. And that is the most awful feeling in the world, that I've broken their trust. When I lied to them and they found out I can't hide things from them, they don't punish me, they don't ground me, they sit there and they talk to me and they tell me how disappointed they are in me. And nothing has worked. I sit there and I'm like, oh my goodness, I've broken their trust, I've let them down. And nothing hurts more to me than knowing that I've let my parents down. You can punish me all you want, you can take me away from the TV, the phone, the car, that's not going to do anything. Breaking my parents' trust is going to hurt me.
Yeah, you've opened up, there are a couple of questions I think that want to be posed to you, and you've agreed to answer them, correct?
Correct?
Okay, Alicia, you want to
I
first?
just have one comment. I think parents, I think that's the worst punishment. I think they do it just to make you, you know, just to put you in the spot, just to make you feel bad, you know.
I don't have a question. I just want to comment. I want to adopt her also. But the thing about calling him and staying out, I've experienced that. And I say no to my son, and he's going to kill me because he's pregnant. But all I hear is, but I'm the oldest one of my friends, and I'm not allowed to do it. I don't know how anyone else feels, but I always feel like I'm fighting the parents, not other parents. You know, I just went through experience with that. And it's not only the kids that you're fighting, but it's other parents. And I don't know whether they don't have enough time to care or they don't care about what they're doing, but I always follow up, I always check up, and he knows that I'll always have time to do that. But I do feel like I'm fighting the other parents. And that's something that we are. Thank you.
Are there any other questions anyone would like to pose while we have this young lady on the phone? Hey, we thank you very much for your call, and I'm going to hang up on you again. I'm not rude, okay?
Hey, thanks for the opportunity to let me voice my opinion.
We really appreciate that. We're going to hang you tomorrow or something. Okay, back to our panel with this area. Again, as a parent or any of you out here, how do you deal with your own children in this area if the issue comes up? What kinds of things do you say to them? How do you let them know that it is an area that you would like them to feel comfortable enough to discuss with you?
And I think one of the big things is that parents have to just want to be able to talk with their kids, talk with them openly about it, not judging, hear what they have to say, hear what they're feeling, and I think the kids also need to know that parents experience these same things also. I know for myself, when I started talking to my father about sex, I was quite young, and when I found out what was involved, he always reminded me that I said, you and mom had to, so here was this image that, parents never are involved, don't really understand what's going on, and good communication, okay, sitting down, talking with the kids, not that you're going to agree with everything they're doing, but sitting down and talking with them, I think can really help out.
Alicia?
I think that they should also ask more questions. Not just like if your child comes in late one night, where were you? I just think that parents should ask more questions to the child, like, are you sexually active? Have you thought about it? Because some parents just don't ask those questions, and I just think that more parents should.
Mr. Kent, I wonder if I can put you on the spot, because we've heard your daughters come out very well here, about some of the things that you people have done in your home so that you have a child who feels this way and is willing to converse with you. Terrible spot to put you in. I gave him a minute warning.
Well, it's, we communicate. Alicia, anything, like you said, we can talk about anything. She has a problem with anything. Out here, we'll hammer it out. Anything she wants to know, she can't find an answer. We'll find one. We'll go to the dictionary, whatever it is. I'm her father. I'm here to teach her. Okay, my kid, you're a teacher. I'm her first teacher. I watch her more than you watch, like you say. People send their children to school. I try to teach Alicia before she goes to school. We sit down and we work. I work the same way with these two guys here. Whatever they want to do, I want to do. Myself personally,
he'd rather be home watching the Sixers game.
Well, that's the case. He's really a dedicated father tonight because it's the first round of the playoffs, and he's here.
Something our pastor told us, and I always took to my life. His children are older than mine, and they were great kids, and I used them as examples in raising my own kids. And he told his teenagers, make the decision ahead of time what you're going to do with sex or what you're going to do with alcohol or drugs or whatever. Make the decision so that when you're faced with it, you don't have to make it on the spur of the moment. If you're in the heat of passion in the backseat of the car, hey, I've already dealt with that. I've already decided I'm not going to do this. Or don't wait till somebody puts a beer in front of you and you have to decide. Decide ahead of time so that when you're there, you're prepared. And I want to share something that will give you all hope. There is hope that your kids can hold up under peer pressure. And I can embarrass my daughter because she's away at school. She's not here. She was pledging into a co-ed honored fraternity at college. And one of the pledging things was to chug this thing of beer. And she's not a drinker. And they put the beer down in front of all these kids. I hope she's not watching. And they said to her, okay, it's time to drink this beer. She looked at the senior of the fraternity and she said, do you mean you want me to drink this beer? And he said, yes. And she thought, if I say no, I'm probably out. So she said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to drink the beer. He said, you mean you're not going to drink the beer? And she said, no. He said, great, I'll drink it. And that was the end for her. They didn't pressure anymore. So there's hope. Your kids can do it.
Thank you. I think it's time that we bring things to a close. And I'd kind of like to wrap up with a couple final comments. A lot of people have asked about, things that we can do and ways that we can maybe help our teenagers. A psychologist by the name of Michael Breslin suggested that teenagers, when faced with pressure, think about the following 4 questions. Does it interfere with your family? Does it interfere with your ability to live up to your potential? Is it an illegal activity like shoplifting, burglary, or drug use? Does it threaten your health? And the suggestion that he made is that if the answer to any of those questions is yes, then the person should step back and rethink what he is going to do. Learning how to say, I'm not going to. One of the students in class yesterday wrote the following words, and I think that these are as good as anything, certainly better than I could express things about some of the comments that we've heard tonight in the area of peer pressure. Someone who succumbs to peer pressure is doomed to unhappiness. A person must have self-respect and must like himself. He can't be what the group wants. Of course, when a person acts differently from a group, he or she is immediately considered strange or uncool. He should be proud to cause waves, and the only friends he needs are the ones who like him for what he is. And maybe somewhere in those words is the start of ways to deal with peer pressure. And one of the things we've learned tonight certainly is that we as educators and people in the community and in all sorts of programs and students and parents have to learn to look for answers that we can help kids to learn to say no and not feel self-conscious with doing this, and feel very good about themselves in being able to say no and knowing that it's perfectly all right to do so. There's certainly something for all of us to take away tonight with that. I'm going to end up with probably the same words I used last year. At 7:30 tonight, the sweat starts dripping down the middle of the back, and we start thinking, and I'm sure some of the panel members, what happens if we bomb? What do we do after 10 minutes? And we had Jan Pierce ready to get up and move the chairs and tap dance for us for a half an hour. That's not a problem. It was not last year, and it has not been tonight. And I think we can thank you members of the panel and you people in the audience for that. Thank you very much. This is the second year of something that I trust is going to become an annual event, and you people did a great job, and we're all appreciative of it. Thank you, and good night.